if you're actively thinking about selling, don't tell anybody. Keep it very close to your chest. Talk to your spouse,
Yeah.
talk to your attorney, talk to
Mhm.
your accountant, but that's about it. You don't want to start leaking the rumor out there that you're thinking of selling your business, because you want this transaction to be as anonymous as possible throughout the entire process. You don't want your employees to find out you're selling your business.
Introducing Leo, a seasoned business broker dedicated to guiding entrepreneurs through the complex landscape of business exits and acquisitions. Leo efficiently balances present profitability with future sale potential, addressing emotional attachments and navigating the intricacies of valuing a business. Drawing from practical experiences, Leo shares insights, including the impact of timing on final evaluations, providing valuable lessons for entrepreneurs. His pragmatic strategies focus on enhancing operational transferability for seamless transitions. Leo's journey reflects a methodical approach, conducting a harmonious dance of evaluation, emotions, and strategic decisions for entrepreneurs. Thank you so much for being here today, Leo. It is such a pleasure to have you, and I would love for you to just dive into your journey. How did you get here today?
Thanks, Dr. C. I really appreciate being on the podcast today. I think it's a great opportunity, and I'm really grateful to share my experiences with your audience. I got into entrepreneurship about 14 years ago.
Mhm.
I had a varied history and work history. I had studied hospitality management. I had gone to graduate school for political science. I worked in the hospitality industry around food and wine, and I decided about 14 years ago, at the height of the recession, to open my own business. And I opened a small retail wine shop in Lohi, which is a neighborhood in Denver, Colorado. And I started that from scratch. I ran that successfully for 13, 14 years. And then I decided to sell my business. I decided to exit my business and move on to a new phase. And that's what brings me here today as a business broker with VR Business Sales. So I actually help other entrepreneurs sell their businesses and help them transition to that next phase, whether it be retirement or another business or just moving on to another professional phase in their career.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so interesting because when we met, I was so intrigued by just what you do and really helping businesses exit their business they've built for years and years, and it can be really difficult. And we don't think of exiting our business when we start. And that's what I think is so important to talk about today, is what led you from once you had your brick and mortar business and then decided to help other businesses exit their business and have those solutions ready to leave their business and make sure it was in good hands. What was that transition like for you?
Absolutely. As you said, and I agree completely, most business owners who start, a small mom and pop or a main street business, as we like to call them, most business owners don't think about exiting. I know I never did, right? I don't know what I was thinking when I opened my business, but I was so inundated with getting the business off the ground, making it successful, marketing, just learning. It was like drinking from a fire hose when I first opened my business.
Right.
And I never, the thought never crossed my mind to say, well, how do I get out of this? How do I exit this? I never thought I'd get out, right? That was a bit of an unrealistic expectation at the time. And so that's something that I like to share with business owners today.
Hi friends, today's video is so special because it's brought to you by our incredible sponsor, Love Sorrow, where your stories meet craftsmanship in the most beautiful way for both men and women. I've recently discovered their custom fine jewelry designs. Trust me, it's a game changer. Check out these amazing pieces being delicately crafted. Each one tells a unique tale, and the best part, you can be a part of the design process. With over 50 chain styles crafted from solid metals, you get that timeless piece that is permanent and seamless without a class. Your piece, your style, your story. Love Sorrow, our sponsor, is offering you a chance to enter a world of understated enchantment. Head over to Love Sorrow's store locations in Los Angeles, California, and Boulder and Cherry Creek, Colorado, to begin your journey. Let's do this together with Love Sorrow. Now back to the show.
Folks who are running their businesses, who have just started their businesses, I find it highly, highly beneficial to really start thinking about an exit plan. So as you're drinking from that fire hose and you're learning about that business in the beginning, save a little bandwidth, save a little room to start to plan for an exit. Because eventually every business owner will exit their business at some point. And I like to say there's really 4 ways out of a business. You can allow your business to dissolve. So in other words, you just close the doors and walk away, hand the key back to the landlord and leave. That's definitely one way to exit a business. You can leave your business to the next generation. So, you can work your entire life. And if you have children, or if there's a spouse or another family member involved who takes the business on after you and carries on your legacy, that's a second way. The third way is not the most exciting. You can be carried out of your business feet first, which means you basically end your life running your business. So that happens to people. Or the fourth way would be to sell your business. And really, I think of the 4, most entrepreneurs are going to gravitate towards selling their business. So as a new business owner, I think it's really important, again, as I said, save a little bit of bandwidth, put a little time aside to start developing that strategy. What could that look like? How would I exit? And it doesn't matter if you're going to leave your business in the next 10 days or the next 10 years. You should definitely have a plan, tucked away, something that you can refer to when that event does occur.
Yes, I love this. And I'm really curious because so a lot of people, the best way is to be able to sell your business if you aren't able to leave it as a legacy for family members or, thank God, no like health issues or anything like that. But when it comes to selling your business, how can people start to position themselves for that sale? Because I know what we talked about not too long ago is that it takes a while to sell a business. It doesn't just happen overnight. For the most part, correct me if I'm wrong, but how can people really maximize that process and being ready for a sale in the future?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question. I hope your viewers and listeners today walk away with at least a couple of pieces of information that are going to be valuable to them. And I hope I can offer some value. In my experience, I have a few tips on way business owners can just start to prepare, right? Just to start to mentally get ready for that. And I went through this same process myself. And I'll tell you, in the 13 years I did run my business, the business really was at its best when I was actively selling it. Because over time, I found when I started to sell my business, I realized that there was a value that my business had that the market would support. And the better that my business looked on paper and in reaching those key performance indicators, the more value I would get for my business when I sold my business. So I really did, like I said, running the business was sort of at its apex during that sales process. And here are a couple of tips I can offer to business owners. First and foremost, always have good, clean financials. That's key. I often come across business owners who, when it comes tax season, right, they get a big box of receipts and they go to their CPA and they dump it on the desk and they say, "All right, do my taxes for me," right?
Yeah.
Those are not clean books.
No.
That's a mess. So really what you want to do is put a system in place to make sure that your financial statements are up to date each and every month. When I sold my business, I mean, and I may be saying something to most business owners who are already doing that, and that's great.
Mhm.
And if you are, I applaud you. But for those out there who, think about that box of receipts and don't really keep a close eye on their day-to-day financials and their monthly statements,
Mhm.
that is the first thing I would highly recommend. So find yourself a bookkeeper, find yourself an accountant, someone who can work with you, or someone who could train you to do the bookkeeping. That was also another tip that I had for entrepreneurs today was, you know, be be open to learning, be open to knowledge. I remember in the early days of my business, I was terrified of keeping track of my financials. I was terrified. I thought I was going to make an error or make a mistake.
Mhm.
Math is not something that I'm drawn to, and numbers aren't something that I'm particularly drawn to.
Yeah.
But after a while, I started working with an accountant and a bookkeeper, and I got the books nice and clean and
Mhm.
up to date.
Yeah.
And then I realized how much I was paying my accountant. And I said, listen, I've got an idea. Why don't we do this?
Mm.
Why don't I hire you to consult with me to
Mm.
teach me how to do my books? Okay, so
Mhm.
I'll pay you a fee. We'll spend maybe 10 or 15 hours. I
Mhm.
want you to show me from the beginning to the end how I can run my own books, how I can keep my own financial statements, so I don't have to continue to pay you a monthly exorbitant fee.
Mhm.
And I found that I could free up my time to do that task while
Right.
delegating other tasks to my staff and my employees.
Mm.
And then that way I was on top of my books monthly. I knew exactly what was going on in my business at any given moment. And that kind of information is extremely powerful when it comes to selling your business.
Right.
When you do sell your business and when you go through that process, if when you have a buyer who's interested, they're going to want to see financials at the end of every month.
Right.
That will be a requirement. And
Mhm.
the bank, if there's a lender involved, will
Mm.
also want to see those financials each and every month.
Right.
So, for example, it's now December, end of December.
Mhm.
If we were in the middle of a sales process, by about the 3rd or 4th of January, a
Mhm.
buyer and or a lender is going to say, send us your latest month of sales figures. We want to see your books.
Right.
So it's really important. That would be the first thing I would recommend,
Mhm.
having good, clean statements up to date.
Mhm.
The second thing I would highly, highly recommend for business owners who are thinking about transitioning out of their business
Mhm.
would be to automate as much as possible.
Mhm.
We often talk about scale. We talk about scaling a business. And oftentimes when we hear that term or we read about that term, we think of multi-billion dollar companies who
Mhm.
scale, right? And
Mhm.
they're able to take a concept and multiply it out. Um, and for the small business owner, it's also available to us to scale, maybe at a smaller level, but it's really important. So what I mean by automating is you want to get yourself out of the business, out of the day-to-day operations as much as possible.
Mhm.
And one of the benefits there when selling your business is that owners, people who want to buy businesses, they're always looking for that phrase, absentee owner. Okay,
Mm.
that is something that they're very drawn to.
Interesting.
Funny thing about business
Mhm.
buyers, this is what they're always looking for. They're
Yeah.
looking for a really profitable business
Mhm.
with a huge amount of cash flow and absentee ownership. In other words, they want to buy a business and sit at home and count money. That's,
Yeah.
most buyers, that's what they're looking for.
Right.
And sometimes they find
Mhm.
those opportunities.
Mhm.
That's not always the case, right? Every business requires an amount of effort and amount of work.
Right.
But if you run a small business
Mhm.
and you're mired in the day-to-day operations of that business and you're the key employee and you're the key manager and you're doing all the work,
Yeah.
kudos to you for working hard on your business.
Mhm.
But it's time to start finding a way that you can pull yourself out of the day-to-day operations,
Mhm.
allow others to do that work, delegate those tasks to others, and you really want to focus on working on your business, not in your business, right? That's often a phrase that we hear. You want to work on your business, not just in your business. And that will help you become more attractive for an acquisition. I'll give you an example. A gentleman that I know runs a wonderful fitness facility, okay? And he does a lot of the work. He's there every day. He's got a great relationship with his clientele. He has a team of folks who lead classes and do some private trainings, right? This is the bulk of his work, right? Classes and private trainings.
Yeah.
But he's also there doing the books. He's doing what's called programming. So he's writing the workouts. And he's also doing much of the personal training himself. So he has one-on-one clients, okay?
Wow.
He's spending a lot of time in his business. So his business really rotates around him and his persona and his personality. He is a key employee in that operation. Now, for a buyer who wants to buy that business, when the seller is gone, right? When he moves on and they sell the deal and they ink the deal and the seller moves on and the buyer comes in to take over the business, now that key person is gone, okay? And that could impact the future performance of the business. So you don't want your business to be completely dependent upon you as an individual. You want your business to be dependent upon the team that you've created, that you're overseeing. That way, when you're taken out of the equation, the business continues to run effectively without you. You want to be able to create a system where you are replaceable. And that is hard for some business owners because some business owners want to be irreplaceable. So those are a couple of tips that I have at this time, you know.
Yes, I love those. And, it's so interesting because a lot of business owners are the key element to their business because they haven't hired out or they haven't been able to automate a lot of things to take that off their plate. So they're fully in it. And there's an emotional attachment to it sometimes because it's your baby. You've started this from the ground up. You want to see it thrive. You want to show that, like, this is my thing that I've created. And I'm really curious, what do you think, what role do you think emotional attachment plays for entrepreneurs looking to exit their ventures?
Wow, that's huge. Yes, absolutely. I can give you some real world experiences with my own background. Yes, emotional attachment is going to be one of the largest issues in selling a business. It was for me. We business owners do create something from nothing. The business often becomes part of our persona, part of our identity, even. I was in a business where I was very, just a personal anecdote of how I was attached emotionally to my business. I was in a business where I was very front facing. Okay. So people came into my store, they saw me, they knew me. They would often refer to my store as, oh, I'm going to go, to Leo's store rather than refer to the business by name. And oftentimes I would go out and about in town and I'd be in a restaurant or I'd be at the bar or I'd be at a performance. And I always run into people who shopped at my store. And that that was really gratifying for me and really filled my cup, right? So I'd see someone out, I'd say, hey, and we'd have a brief conversation. And so that was something that was a value that my business brought to me because I'm a social and outgoing person. So having all that exposure to all these different individuals in town really resonated with me. That was an emotional attachment I had. I felt like that business was a part of my identity. So yes, it can be quite a large obstacle for most business owners to go through, to understand that, this is my business. But I think for business owners who are thinking about moving on, or retiring or moving into the next phase, I think it's important first to recognize that there will be this emotional attachment. Absolutely. And, it would be a best practice to just at least recognize that and try and work through that as much as you can, by convincing yourself that you are more than this business, right? You have created something. You've done a great job. You should be proud of your accomplishments, but there are more accomplishments down the road to accomplish. And if you move on from this business, sure, you're going to leave a part of you behind, but you're going to open so many new doors, and you're going to add back to your identity through the new things and the new pathways that you're going to carve. So I see it as an opportunity for growth. I see it as an opportunity for personal growth, and personal fulfillment. So yeah, that's what I would recommend to folks, is realize that it's going to be tough, and you're going to have it's a bit of an emotional roller coaster. And I have to give kudos to my wife as well, for being so supportive throughout my entrepreneurial path. And this was one of the things that she brought up to me quite often when I was selling my business. She says, you're going to have days, and there are going to be days when there's going to be highs and there's going to be lows, because you're so attached to this business, and you've been doing it for so long. And she was absolutely right. But I was able to get through that and get past that challenge and realize that, there are other doors that will be open, and there will be more that I can add to my own identity. I'm not my business. I'm much more than that.
Exactly. And I agree. I think so many entrepreneurs that I've met, they are so attached to their business. It becomes their identity. When they introduce themselves, it's their name and then their business, versus just like who they are, what they like to do. And I've been going to a lot of networking events, and that's usually, okay, what do you do? Instead of like, who are you as a person? Because we are so much more than our business. That's a piece of us, but it's not everything. And, part of just selling a business, everything that you have gone through, what were some of the, I would say, like, obstacles in selling your business and then transitioning to helping being a business broker yourself?
Well, some of the obstacles in the actual sales process,
Yeah.
was a little bit of, what's the word I'm looking for? Unpredictability. So, you would list your business. Your business would be for sale. Normally, you would have a listing contract with a broker for about 12 months. So you have a contractual obligation to work with a specific broker, let's say for 12 months, which is about the time it takes to sell a business. People often ask me, that's the first question they say. We'll say, well, how long will this process take? Well, it could take up to a year, easily. I mean, you should plan on that. So if you're looking for a real quick exit, like, oh, I need to be out in 3 weeks, yeah, that's not going to happen. So in other words, if you're starting to think about that process, it's a good idea to start earlier rather than later. If you know there are some economic trends coming down the pike, if you know there are some legislative changes that might be happening or going to affect your industry in the next 12 to 18 months, you may want to start thinking about selling now and getting those wheels into motion now, because it's going to take quite a while. So for me, some of the obstacles were, trying to run my business knowing that it was for sale. So every day I had to walk into my business, and I had a couple of conflicting thoughts in my mind. One was, wow, maybe today is the day we find a buyer and I can finally exit. And the second thought was, gee, I need to just forget my business is for sale, right? I have to focus on my business. I have to run my business effectively. And I like to say, keep my foot on the gas. That's oftentimes what business owners, a mistake that business owners often make is they list their business, they get their business ready for sale.
Mhm.
And then while they're in that phase looking for a buyer, or even when they're working with a buyer and negotiating, they
Mhm.
often take their foot off the gas or they take their eye off the ball and they
Yeah.
start to maybe I guess we used to call it in high school, I think it was senioritis, right?
Yeah.
At the last couple of months in high school,
Right.
you would sort of check out, and
Mhm.
because you see the end on the horizon.
Mhm.
Uh, you don't want to do that as a business owner.
Yeah.
You want to keep the pedal to the metal. You want to keep the eye on the ball. You want to keep your sales up. You want to keep,
Mhm.
making investments in your business to make it as beautiful and as valuable as possible for your
Mhm.
buyer. So that was one obstacle, was this sort of unpredictability. Do I have a buyer? Do I not? How long is this going to take? And then avoid falling into that trap of sort of neglecting your business during the sales process. You definitely want to keep moving and keep doing what you've been doing to make it successful. You have to do that all the way through the end. I'll give you an example,
Yeah.
a real world example of a friend of mine who sold their business.
Mm.
He and his wife had a wine bar for about maybe about 10 years. They had a wine bar.
Yeah.
And they had a buyer. They had a person come to the table and that was interested in the business. And he recounted the story to me. And I don't know how this happened, okay?
Mhm.
But they got to the closing table, right? So
Mhm.
they had a date when they were going to close and finalize the sale. And
Right.
I think about 2 weeks or 3 weeks before the closing date, they decided, well, we've got a buyer, we've got a closing date.
Mhm.
Let's close the business, right? We're tired. We've been doing this for so long. It's time for us to just now start to take a break. So they did that. They closed the business, um, which is not advisable, by the way.
Yeah.
And they got to the closing table, and the day before the closing, the buyer did not have the funds. I
Mm.
don't know how it got to this point. They couldn't secure the loan and they didn't have a down payment. So the entire thing basically fell apart the day before they were supposed to close, right? Now that is a worst case scenario, but
Mhm.
that is something that can happen. So in their case, for example, let's
Mhm.
just say this deal fell apart
Yeah.
and then they had to continue to run the business. Well, now they've been closed for a few weeks, right? And they've announced on social media, hey, we're closed. It's been so much fun serving you for 10 years, but we're moving on. Well, now they may have to find themselves going back into the business, reopen the business because they need an income, right? Until they find a new buyer.
Mhm.
So this is one of these challenges that you can find yourself into. So again, it's unpredictable.
Mhm.
Anything can happen in a business sale.
Yeah.
Uh, we brokers often say that a business sale will fall apart 3 times before you finally get to closing.
Oh
So
no.
these are things that you should sort of anticipate, bumps in the road and
Mhm.
obstacles. But there's an interesting quote about obstacles by Marcus Aurelius, was a Roman emperor.
Mhm.
And I think he said, the impediment to action advances action. What
Mhm.
stands in the way becomes the way. So
Mm.
basically, he talks about obstacles that define your path now, rather than seeing an obstacle as ending your path
Mhm.
or stopping you in your tracks. It merely just defines the route you're now going to take.
Right.
So obstacles should be seen in a different light. They could be seen as opportunities as well.
Mm. I love that reframe because I do believe that it is an opportunity. It might not be working out because there's something better waiting for you or a different way to go about it. But sometimes we look so closely at that closed door that why didn't it work this way? This is how I wanted it to work, or if it falls apart. And hopefully that doesn't happen to anybody, but I know it does happen. And it's just being really smart with each step and making sure you don't jump the gun, basically, and understanding that it is step by step and the process might not be perfect, but eventually it will work out the way it's supposed to. And I'm really curious because a lot of times when it's like a house, when somebody's selling a house, they are so attached to their home. They're like, this is how much it's worth. This is how much I want it to be. And when you evaluate it, it's not what they want. How is that like with business? When somebody's selling their business, they might think it's worth a certain amount. How do you value a business when you are selling it or helping them sell
Absolutely. Well, one of the phrases, one of the words I try to avoid when
it?
talking about this topic
Mhm,
is worth. Okay.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
because worth means something to so many different people.
Yes.
There's a lot of worth in a business. There's financial worth, but there's emotional worth there as well.
Right.
There's sweat equity. So for business owners, um, they spend a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of stress, and a lot of emotional capital on building their business.
Mhm,
That creates tremendous worth to that individual, right? Um, you had a great example about your home.
mhm,
Your home is not just an asset on paper, right? Your home is where you raise your kids. Your home is where you entertain guests at Christmas. Your
mhm.
home is where you, had your first business sale. Your home has a huge emotional attachment to
Yeah.
people.
Mhm.
That concept of worth
Yeah.
is very different to how a bank looks at it, right? A bank
Mhm.
is just going to look at it on paper. What is
Yeah.
the market what does the market support? It's very similar in business sales.
Mhm.
So a business owner may put a lot of effort and a lot of time in their business and say, wow, I need $5 million for my business because,
Mhm.
boy, that's about how much I've put into this.
Yeah.
Reality may be a little different. So as I said in the beginning, I said I don't like to use the term worth.
Mhm.
What I like to tell people is I'm going to place a value on your business based on what the market will support.
Mhm.
Value based on what the market supports.
Mhm.
What the market supports today may not be what you believe you've put into it. And
Mhm.
that's often the case, actually.
Yeah. Mhm.
One of the obstacles I find in business brokerage,
Mhm.
selling businesses, is working with business owners who have an unrealistic expectation of what their business could earn at a sale.
Mm.
Everyone believes their business is worth more than it is.
Mhm.
And so that's a delicate conversation and a difficult conversation that we often have with sellers.
Mhm.
But as a business broker, it's my job to come to the table with realistic expectations and to be able to set the table for the seller and say, look, you have a great opportunity. You've built a business. There's value here.
Mhm.
You definitely have something that another person will benefit from when they buy it. But
Mhm.
you have to understand that there is a limit to that value. And
Mhm.
that value is determined by market forces, by what someone is willing to pay, and by what someone is willing to finance as well.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, when you do a business sale, more times than not, you will have to secure some financing. Usually, that's in the form of a small business administration or an SBA loan.
Mhm.
This means that your business deal will go to underwriting at the SBA, and a bank will take a look at your business and
Mhm.
determine its value based on market conditions and how much they'll lend on that. And
Mhm.
that number and the
Mhm.
number that the seller has in their mind often don't align.
Mhm.
So sometimes it is a difficult conversation to work with a seller and say, look, you're going to get value from your business. It may not be the number you had in mind. But
Mhm.
again, this is also the reason why it's important to start that exit planning as soon as possible. So you are introduced to this concept early on in your stage.
Mhm.
Um, One of the worst things is imagine if a person
Mhm.
runs their business for 30 years.
Right.
And they haven't done any work at all about exit planning. And then they think, they plan on retiring. They're going to sell their business. They're going to retire. And they have a number in their mind. Oh, I need this for retirement. Okay. Then we get to the business sale and we find out actually, indeed, um, the business, the value of the business is a different number.
Mm.
Uh, that could be pretty bad news for someone who's been banking on something for 30 years. So
Right.
it's important that they understand that process as early in their entrepreneurial career as possible, so they can start to plan for that. And then they have a more realistic expectation of what an exit is actually going to look like. So I hope I answered your question. It was a bit long-winded, but
No, it's just perfect. And you're right. People aren't thinking 30 years, okay, I've built this business, I'm ready to retire. But then the number that they need or want in their head is not what the business is valued at based off of the times today versus 30 years ago. But it's being able to be really effective in having an exit strategy. It's not something we want to talk about or think about because we're pouring blood, sweat, and tears into our business, especially the first 5 years, I would say. But being able to realize that it's only going to help you in the long run. And I'm really curious because a lot of business owners, I talk to a lot of service-based businesses versus brick and mortar and product. What have you seen with being able to value a business like, for instance, emails or video or things that aren't as like concrete? I guess you could say it's more that creative side. What does that look like when it comes to maybe an exit strategy for a business like that?
yeah, sure. Service businesses, obviously, our economy is probably transitioning more towards service-based businesses.
Right.
Brick and mortar businesses, Main Street businesses that we are most familiar with, are starting to transition, and we're seeing much more service-based. So,
Hmm.
a digital marketing business, for example, software as a service,
Hmm.
a CPA, for example, an accountant.
Yeah.
Yes, these are all businesses that also provide a service and they have value. And where that value is normally found is in that client list as well, right? So you
Hmm.
may not have hard assets, you may not have machinery and equipment and a fleet of vehicles
Hmm.
that would transfer when you sell that business.
Right.
But what you do have is you do have a record of work, you have a client list, and hopefully, apart from the client list, you have contracts with
Mm.
many of your clients.
Mhm.
That's one thing I would recommend to service-based businesses. If you can create a system of contracting with your clients,
Mm.
where, for example, when a new owner comes in to buy that business, that
Mhm.
contract is still valid. Okay.
Mhm.
So during that transition phase, the seller leaves, a new buyer comes in, a new owner comes in and takes over that existing contract. And
Mhm.
so that person has more confidence that the sales are going to be there on day two after they open the business, right? After
Right.
they, purchase the business.
Mhm.
So that's really important,
Mm.
is having, recurring revenue or any sorts of contracts that you
Mhm.
can extend. I'll give you an example. I just had a conversation with a gentleman who has a light manufacturing company.
Mm.
And, he has one of his friends owns a business and his friend is giving him a lot of work, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I said to him, I said, look, I said, it's great that your friend is one of your clients. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
But realize that when a new owner comes in to buy your business, that
Mhm.
friend of yours who is giving you all this business may not give that business to the new owner.
Right.
So one way to protect yourself in that situation is maybe have a conversation with your friend to develop some sort of a contract that
Mm.
says, okay, I'm going to provide you with these services for the next 12 or 18 months at this monthly rate or whatnot.
Mhm.
So then that contract can be assumed by
Mm.
the new buyer. And that
Mhm.
gives the new buyer a little more confidence that these clients are going to stick around. Okay.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
I go back to my gym owner
Mhm.
friend who, as I said, has all these personal training clients, Well, it might be a good idea for him to sort of transition out of that role because
Right.
he may have these clients because they really like him
Mm-hmm.
and they're emotionally attached to him. If
Yeah.
a new owner were to come in and take over for him,
Mm-hmm.
those clients might leave.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a disservice to the new owner.
Right.
So you want to be very careful when you have a service-based business to
Mm-hmm.
construct a system that your clients will stay with the new owner at least for a period of time, at
Right.
least 6 months or 12 months. And then that gives the new owner an opportunity to then work with those folks one-on-one and say, look, and sort of reassure them that, look, you've been doing business with this company for all this time. I'm now the new owner. I'd love to continue to do business with you.
Mm-hmm.
Let me show you what I can do for you and the value that I can provide.
Mm-hmm.
And so you make the case.
Yeah.
So that's something that's very important for service-based businesses.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you sharing that because a lot of people might not be even thinking of that aspect because they want to be able to have a good sale and transfer it seamlessly as much as possible because it can be a little like murky sometimes depending on the business. But I'm really curious, what strategies do you recommend for entrepreneurs to enhance the transferability of their business operations to have that smooth transition to the owner? I know we talked about clients, but is there anything else people should be aware of to make that process a little bit more smooth for the new owner?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, one of those tips that I had mentioned is make sure that you, as the owner, can pull yourself out as much as possible and build a really strong team uh, and delegate those responsibilities to a really strong team. You don't want the business to be overly reliant on one person. There's an analogy we use in the broker business. It's not the best phrase in the world, but we call
Mhm.
it the bus test.
Hmm.
And basically it says, if this person were to be hit by a bus tomorrow, could the
Yeah.
company still function?
Right.
So you always want to ask yourself,
Yeah.
am I passing the bus test? If I were removed from the equation today, what would happen to the business?
Mhm.
If the answer is, oh my God, my business would absolutely fall apart, well, that's not good for a sale. So you definitely want to build that team who can handle a lot of tasks so you're not the sole key employee. And
Right.
then also understand that as an owner, you will more than likely agree to a transition phase where you stay on board to train the new owner. And
Mm.
that can be 2 to 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the size of the business or the type of the business. And oftentimes that is that's a point of negotiation in the sale, but oftentimes, usually that's at a no fee rate. So the new ownership would stay on board under certain parameters. I'm going to be here Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, to train this new owner for 14 days or 21 days or something to that effect. And that will be written into the sales contract. That will be a point of negotiation. And it might be, look, I can give you 20 hours a week for 4 weeks, or I can give you 30 hours a week for 6 weeks, or something to that effect.
Mhm.
What you don't want is you
Mhm.
is you don't want a new owner who needs the seller, the old owner, to stay on board and work
Mhm.
on Saturdays and come in on Sundays and all that kind of stuff. All that will be negotiated in the sales process,
Mhm.
and you will have specific parameters of when you're available to train. But that is something that you should expect if you want to sell your business, is that training period, because you want that person to be successful. You want to set them up. You want your legacy to carry on. So you are also vested in making sure this new person is successful.
Mhm. I love that. This is all great insight. I'm just like, yes, I'm absorbing all of it for my own businesses. But I'm really curious because I know there's a lot of things that happen on the back end of business. But what are some of the tools that you use to help with business sales and the brokerage that you have? How do you navigate that on the back end system wise?
To help with a business sale.
Yes, like any of the tools that you use.
Well, having a CRM is something
Hmm.
that's really important. Having a really good automated workflow, an email campaign workflow
Hmm.
for folks. We employ a lot of tools like, DocuSign, is built into the CRM as well. We use some websites where we advertise your business,
Hmm.
and we advertise your business anonymously.
Hmm.
In the business sales world,
Yeah.
it's very similar to, I often describe it as very similar to real estate. Okay.
Hmm.
So you have a large asset that you want to sell. You work with a broker who manages that transaction for you because it can be somewhat complex.
Right.
A business sale is highly complex,
Hmm.
more so than a home sale. But the difference between a business sale and a home sale is when you sell your home,
Hmm.
you put a sign in the yard, you
Yeah.
have an open house, you put balloons up, you invite people in, you tell the whole world your home is for sale.
Hmm.
With a business sale, it's the absolute opposite of that. With a business sale, you want that sale to be anonymous.
Hmm.
So another tip I'd like to give to
Yeah.
business owners, if I could
Please.
today, is, if you're thinking about selling your business,
Hmm.
or exiting, which everyone should be thinking about exiting at some point. But if you're actively thinking about selling, uh, don't tell anybody. Keep it
Hmm.
very close to your chest. Um, talk to your spouse,
Yeah.
talk to your attorney, talk to
Hmm.
your accountant. But that's about it. You don't want to start leaking the rumor out there that you're thinking of selling your business,
Hmm.
because you want this transaction to be as anonymous as possible throughout the entire process. You don't want your employees to find out you're selling your business. You
Hmm.
don't want your vendors to find out. You don't want your customers to find out. You want to keep all of that under wraps. So as business brokers, we're in a delicate position
Yeah.
because we're trying to sell and market this huge asset
Hmm.
without necessarily advertising to the whole world that XYZ company is for sale, right?
Yeah.
So that's what makes the business sales process somewhat complicated. And that's why it's really important to hire a good broker who can manage that transaction for you and who knows how to market a business while keeping it anonymous, and keeping it, a secret all the way through signing the final paperwork.
Man, I just learned something new because I had no idea. Like I knew like you're not like shouting it from the rooftops, but even finding businesses that want to sell but like not talking about it. It's like when I was a therapist, I couldn't like say anything about any clients, which I mean I still never will to this day, but the confidentiality, you couldn't tell them that you were there and put it out there. But looking at it from a business broker's point of view, I never even had that concept. It's so interesting to me, but it's also protecting the business and the employees, the vendors, if you are selling it, so it can transition easy, more easy for that process. But that's so intriguing. So how do you go about that? How do people find you?
Well, what we do as business brokers is we create a multi-page document, what we would call a confidential business review. This
Mm,
would be a comprehensive description of your business. This would talk about your business in detail, okay? And
yeah.
this would, yes, identify the business, the
Mhm.
address, uh, you know, talk about the number of employees, talk about the sales, talk about the history, talk about the ownership.
Yeah.
We produce this document as
Mhm.
a piece of marketing, okay?
Mhm.
Before that piece of document, then we would create a listing, much like a home listing on a site, and we would keep everything anonymous. So we
Mhm.
would talk about, we might say something like, oh, here's a light manufacturing company for sale in Denver County, sales of $2 million, cash flow of 300,000, and we're looking for $1 million for the business. And
Right.
that's it,
Yeah.
and it's going to be very nondescript.
Mm.
And it's not going to give away any of the information about the actual business. Then buyers will peruse that site and they'll start looking for those sorts of businesses. Oh, I know I want a manufacturing business. I know I want something in Denver County. I know
Mhm.
I want something with $2 million in sales. And they'll start to hone in on those listings. And then they'll contact the broker. And then the broker
Mhm.
will demand that they sign a non-disclosure agreement. And once
Mhm.
that non-disclosure agreement is signed, then I can share the business information with that person. Then I
Mhm.
can send them that confidential business review. I can talk about the business and identify the identity of the business, but not before an NDA is signed. That's very standard practice, and
Mhm.
that makes sure that we protect the seller, and that people aren't out there, talking about this business for sale. It's a
Mhm.
very, very key part
Yeah.
of business brokerage is confidentiality. Absolutely.
Mm, yeah. No, that makes a lot more sense. I'm like, I was just so intrigued. And I'm really curious because I know we kind of talked about how you got to being a business broker, but can you really say like what intrigued you even to become a business broker?
Well, I'll tell you, and I was faced with something I think a lot of business owners are faced with,
Hmm.
when they are thinking of selling their business.
Yeah.
This attitude of, oh, what am I going to do? I can't do anything else but run this business.
Right.
And I have to admit, I was afflicted a little bit by that
Mhm.
attitude as well.
Mhm.
And as I knew I wanted to stay in an entrepreneurial capacity.
Right.
I knew that I wasn't going to go get a job somewhere. I was going to
Mhm.
either have another business, open another business, buy another business, or do something entrepreneurial. So
Mhm.
that was one facet. The next part of it was, after working with a broker who did sell my business, I hired a broker to sell my
Mhm.
business.
Mhm.
I was able to sort of observe what they did for a living. And I thought to myself, I said, wow, this is a really interesting area of work
Mhm.
because it's still entrepreneurial. You still have your own practice.
Right.
You're dealing with entrepreneurs all day long. Like that is your peer
Mhm.
group.
Right.
And I really enjoy being around other entrepreneurs because
Mhm.
of the way they think and rationalize and their problem solving abilities and the risks that they
Mhm.
take in their businesses, and the creativity that entrepreneurs often bring to the table. So I knew I wanted to continue to work with entrepreneurs,
Mhm.
and business brokerage just seemed like a natural transition for me.
Right.
I could still connect with people.
Mhm.
I could still work with entrepreneurs, and I was still running my own business and calling the shots. So that's how I got into it.
I love it. It makes so much sense. Just it was a transition that needed to happen, and you get to meet all these different cool individuals that have a similar mindset as well. And I'm curious, what does the future look like in the next year or so for you? What are some of the goals or aspirations you have?
Well, the goals I have in the next year are definitely to build my business and to help more entrepreneurs realize this goal and this dream of eventually exiting their business. So, I'm working with a couple of folks right now to create. We're going to do some videos on business brokerage and some of the tips and tricks that business owners should learn when thinking about selling their business. So we're going to do a video series. So I'm working on that. I'm
Awesome.
working on another I'm working with another young lady to help me design, an efficient automated email campaign workflow.
Mhm.
So that's on the my desk right now. But I'm definitely, really excited about just building this practice and trying to network with as many entrepreneurs as possible and help them, realize that goal of exiting. And, we keep talking about the seller side and getting out of a business,
Right.
but, you know, with a sale, there's always a buy side.
Right.
And
Right.
it's also helping people, achieve the dream of entrepreneurship and
Hmm.
helping those people who say, I've got an idea, or, I want to be my own boss, or I'm tired of working for other people, or I'm ready to strike out on my own. And let me tell you, opening a business from scratch is a great opportunity, and it's a great activity. And I highly recommend to those who are inspired to do that. However, with new businesses, there is a really high failure rate. It's 75% of new businesses fail within the first 3 years, I think I saw the most recent statistic.
Yeah.
That's why it's really important to consider, entrepreneurship through acquisition. So rather than starting your own business from nothing, finding a business that you can actually maybe purchase. If you have enough money, if you have enough capital or access to capital to start a business from scratch, oftentimes it's actually more beneficial to use that capital to leverage a loan to purchase an existing business. And you'll find that it's a better opportunity to do it that way. I'll give you an example. I was just talking to a woman the other day. She was telling me about her husband has a small business where he's making products out of wood, wooden products like cutting boards and, fashionable cutting boards and boards for charcuterie and, small little pieces of furniture and things like that. And as a matter of fact, that same week, I was talking to a business owner who wants to sell his business, and he has a woodworking and a millworking business where he makes furniture, and he has all these contracts where he produces these types of goods.
Yeah.
So I thought, wow, here's a perfect opportunity for this person who wants to start has a small business. They're trying to get it off the ground. They're trying to do it from nothing. You could purchase this other business, continue to do the work that business is doing, earn that revenue, earn that income, and then also use it as a platform to springboard off of with your own business. So you're taking over something existing, you're taking over that revenue, but then you also have this platform to be able to integrate your own ideas and your own product. And now you're adding value to that business, and you're building that, and you're creating more value for yourself. So I would definitely highly recommend anyone who's thinking about entrepreneurship, purchasing a business is really a great strategy. And in the next 10 to 15 years, I mean, we all know about aging and retiring baby boomers, right? I mean, this is a reality. Some people refer to it as a silver tsunami. There's going to be an enormous transfer of wealth over the next 10 to 15 years. Baby boomers are going to retire. They're going to leave their estates behind. They're selling their businesses. They're selling their homes. So there will be a lot of businesses on the market. There are now and probably for the next 10 to 15 years easily. So this is a great opportunity, a great time to help and work yourself into that transition, by buying a business.
Yeah, it's just not reinventing the wheel. Like you already have a foundation and you can build upon it how you want, but instead of having to start completely from scratch, because like you said, most businesses do fail in the first year, definitely the first 5 years, but being able to recognize that. And so much insight. I've been so enjoying this conversation, Leo, but where can people find you, use your services? We're going to link everything below, but if you could let us know too.
Yeah, well, again, my name's Leo Bortolotto, and I'm with VR Business Sales here in Denver. You can reach me at leo@vrmilehigh.com. And the website is also vrmilehigh.com. So you can reach me there. Ask me questions. I'd be happy to chat with you. If you're a business owner who's starting to think of that transition, or you just want more information about what the business sales process looks like, just give me an email at leo@vrmilehigh.com, and I'd love to chat with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Leo, for giving us your time today, all the insights. You are a wealth of knowledge, but I'm so glad we got to meet and just hearing everything that you are doing to help business owners have that exit strategy, and also talking about the buyer side too. But I think really being aware of this is not something that was ever really on my radar until we met. And I'm like, yes, we need to talk about this so other business owners can be in a really good position when they are ready to sell, or be strategic before they're ready to sell.
I really appreciate being on your podcast today, and I hope I was able to let people walk away with some tidbits of information. So thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. There was so much there. So definitely rewatch this, take notes. But thank you again, Leo. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment below what was the biggest takeaway from today, and we'll see you on the next episode.